Hey guys, what's going on? Thanks for tuning into this next Sunday Scaries edition of the podcast. This episode today was phenomenal. We had Dennis Porter back on again, and I had two coaches from Pomp's crypto course. We had Kody Low, who was previously on episode 3 of the podcast, and Balage. He's also one of the other coaches in there. He's very technical, great guy to talk to. We had some very kind of game theory, philosophical type conversation today. And Balage brought in some very great points. I was kind of misunderstood originally some of the points he was making, but I think in the end we all agreed. I think the biggest thing we weren't agreeing upon was just time preference things with Bitcoin adoption and all that. But it was a fantastic episode. As always, please make sure to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell if you haven't already. And please leave your comments in the description down below. You'll find all of our Twitter handles there too. So if you want to give any of us a follow, highly encourage it. We do these Sunday Scaries editions of this podcast. We record them actually on Saturdays, and I post out the Zoom link the Friday beforehand on my Twitter. That is at Alan Hoddle. It's also on the podcast Twitter at COB Podcast. And if you want to join in, talk some smack, or want to bring in some topics that you just don't understand about, you're more than welcome to join in and converse with me, my co-host Moist, and Shawn, and Jacob, our producers, even in here talking from time to time. So enough about that. Enjoy the conversation. Here it is. Thanks, guys.
From you guys.
So I was in cohort 3. So is Nick. I met Dennis. Actually, I met Dennis through Moist, who was also in cohort 3. But
What
Dennis,
a name.
Yeah, you've probably seen him. He's infamous for one episode with Anthony Pompliano's Lunch Money podcast.
Okay.
I don't know if you heard his story, but he literally was like on every YouTube page, just like commenting like, "I'm gonna get on your show. I'm gonna get on your show." And then like this whole thing divulged into like you had like Moist, and then there's like Damp. And like Damp was like his girlfriend, and there's just like all these people trying to like get him on. So Pomp eventually had him on, but Moist is like super young. He's still in college. Good dude. He's learning a lot in the space, just like the rest of us. So
has he done any of the cohort? Was he in the cohort as well, or?
Yeah, he was in cohort 3. He's actually
Cool.
one of my co-hosts on the podcast. So we
Nice.
do a lot of our shows together. We interviewed Dennis on one of our episodes. I think it was episode 4. But I'll let Nick and Dennis introduce themselves to you.
Nice.
Yep, I
boys.
Cohort 3 with Alan, so linked up through there. So it was a good experience, just connecting with a ton of like-minded, really smart people. So nice to meet you, man.
Yeah, nice to meet you as well.
What's up, Mac? Yeah, I'm just another degenerate podcaster trying to do what Bitcoiners do and create more content around this incredible technology. So I started a podcast called Smart People Shit, and I really cut my teeth in Clubhouse. So I spent like 500 hours or some crazy amount of time in Clubhouse talking about Bitcoin, learning about Bitcoin. Yeah, I mean, I've been around since 2017, but I didn't make the decision to go public until recently. And so now I'm just full-time educating people about Bitcoin, talking about Bitcoin, and trying to stack more sats and just talk to new people all the time. I love to just improve the way I talk about Bitcoin. It's kind of once you start talking about Bitcoin, you get addicted to it, but then you want to get really good at talking about Bitcoin. So you appear everywhere you can to talk as much as you can.
Yeah, I agree. Having a bulletproof element to what people bring forward is quite good. You harden against things as well. The more that if anybody says anything, obviously we know how to counter most of the arguments with with Bitcoin taking too much energy these days. But once upon a time, that energy narrative was quite a difficult one. Like you'd be like, yeah, it is labor intensive. You're right. But as things progress, now we got volcano power, man.
Hell yeah. It's Bitcoiners, sometimes we might not figure out the counter argument right away, but they're good at figuring it out and putting down all the FUD, for sure.
That's true, man.
So what have you guys been up to
Is there any one moment along the way where you you got like humbled, well, basically getting to where you are right now. Like you said, you're trying to just get better about talking about Bitcoin. Because like I started writing about it pretty recently, and I'm even new to just even that process of just writing about things, like jotting my thoughts aside from like, in like a formal newsletter. And so, I'm kind of learning along the way too.
I think we're all learning here.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
If you want to get good at talking about, writing about Bitcoin, you just got to keep doing it continuously over and over again. And it's the same with anything, right? You want to get strong, you got to lift weights on a regular basis, and you have to be consistent. And for me, it was bad when I took that trip to Miami, because I didn't really, I took such a large break, and then recovering from the trip because we were just partying all the time. Partying, by I just mean drinking, nothing else. But that word can mean a lot. That word can mean a lot of things, especially when you're in Miami. That word can mean a lot.
And some of the big Twitter accounts too, man. They post some questionable stuff sometimes.
Oh yeah. I mean, I don't have any problem with people want to put in their bodies. It's not an issue to me. I mean, I used to be
back in 2017.
I had my own phase that I went through as well. So but I took a break. Basically, it was like a 2-week break, and it was like hard to even just with a 2-week break to get back to talking about it and getting back in the swing of things. And then I like had to rebuild, almost like had to rebuild. So if you're gonna do it, you got to just be consistent. You don't have to do, you don't have to burn yourself out and write an article every day. Just like you don't want to go to the gym 2 to 3 times a day. Like you're gonna end up doing damage to your body. So
wait, you're not
be
supposed
consistent.
To do that?
Yeah, right.
Shit.
Consistently go, consistently write, consistently talk. That's what I try to do. So, and that makes a big improvement on your ability to do it as long as you're consistent.
You guys just wrapped up the class, right, Mac?
Yeah, we just wrapped up cohort 4. We actually had a no-show at the job fair. I don't know if you guys heard about it.
Really? Yeah. I haven't heard about it. Who didn't show up?
I think it was DGA Capital. Or, see, we've even forgotten the name. Like we're just like, no, we move on.
Probably GDA Capital.
GDA.
Yeah.
Yeah, GDA Capital. They no-showed on us, man. So it was awkward for about 15 minutes. And I think it was Colton who had like a background of just like, just some memes and just trying to make everyone happy until the next person came out. I was like, oh, I'm feeling it. But no, we definitely had, OK Coin come to the table, and we saw Coinbase there and everything like that. So that was nice. I don't think you kind of get that experience in other places where all of a sudden, recruitment people from HR and recruitment are there in front of you telling you, hey, if you want to get in, this is what we're doing.
Yeah, for sure. No, it was an incredible experience, in my opinion. I personally thought it was a very well spent $1,000. I wouldn't be here, and I wouldn't have met. Maybe I would have. I don't know. It's hard to say, but it definitely accelerated like a ton of stuff forward. Just meeting guys like you. I'm curious. Do you feel like you got your money's worth? Do you feel like it was worth it?
100%. Like I think I come from a place where if you pay $1,000 for something, you can put $1,000 weighting on just the connections, right? Or you can put $1,000 weighting on the what you learned. And I think value can be subjective, and you can swing value either way. But I think first week paid for itself just in the company from both the coaches and then from the network of people that you're around. They're just amazing because they're in it together as well. They've got skin in the game. They paid $1,000, and you just feel uplifted from the whole experience. So definitely value. Yeah, 100%. First week, I reckon it was paid off.
Yeah, that's how I felt too. As long as you take advantage of all the things that class provides, I mean, mainly it's just like, for me, it was mainly networking on everything. I'm curious, I'm assuming you've applied to a couple places. How coming into the class, like what was your position on, like, I'm not sure like what your knowledge base was coming in. What kind of coins were you dabbling in? Like, what are your opinions now exiting the class?
So I came from a I did like a bit of mining back early in 2013, which was really, you know, that fun. With 2017, you know, hysteria, craziness, and everything like that. One thing that, you know, I learned earlier on is that Bitcoin was either going to be like, this was like the earliest stage back in 2013. I asked this guy, I was like, look, how high do you think this is going to go? And he goes, look, I can't tell you, I can't promise you anything, but it's either going to be zero or the moon. And that was the first time I heard it. Like this was early stage. And I was like, what is moon? and and he's just like, look, it's either going to be zero or a number that we just cannot comprehend. And this guy was nuts. So basically, I said, how much are you putting into all your mining equipment? He goes, well, to put it in perspective, I've just taken a loan on my entire home.
Jesus, he was
Oh.
committed.
He's all in.
It probably paid off if he stuck to it.
It would have definitely paid off. He
You said would
basically
have.
Oh no, it did. Yeah.
Oh, it did. Okay.
I just don't.
There's
I really
that
don't
turn
have
to the
much
story.
contact with him anymore. Yeah, that's the thing. I really wanted to, you know, kind of thank him for the guidance, and that's why I'm here because, you know, there's a lot of people entering the market, you know, even from 2017 who are still freaking out because, you know, now they're in the plus. If they bought the high of 2017, they're in the plus and thinking like, do I sell? And you know that question alone is definitely subjective as well. Sometimes you need to take cream off the top if you need to take profits, right? Like you can't just hold if the family around you is like dying of starvation, you're obviously gonna have to take some profits.
Right.
But that's the reason why I'm here. Pay it forward, right? Like just give people a little bit of advice and along the way. But yeah, to put it into perspective, Bitcoin, Litecoin, mining, but then you know dabbled in all the shit coins you could ever think of.
Yes, that's. I wanted to hear you say shit coins before I started saying shit coin.
We're all good. You're like, oh, he's in. All right, cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep.
We vetted him.
and yeah, so here we are, like, you know, cohort 4, cohort 3, and just a lot of great people coming out of that. So
yeah, it seemed like your class this go around, there's a bigger push for pushing people towards like the Bitcoin maximalism type ideals. I feel like a lot of shitcoinery was allowed to be thrown around in my class, but all I could see from still being in the Slack was just like the memes. You guys knocked it out of the park with all the memes. I mean, you blew us out of the water. We sucked.
Yeah, our meme game was pretty weak.
Like, did they encourage you to make memes in the Slack?
Yeah,
or Bitcoin or whatever?
I can show. I don't think. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't think I'm gonna get in any trouble for showing.
Well, you can just send me some of the ones.
I'll send you some of the good ones. Yeah.
You don't need to show me access or whatever. I know how that can be, but yeah, I love Slack. I mean, it's a really great tool for communicating. But yeah, that's interesting that they recruit you to make memes.
Oh, it's a meme factory.
You might you might never know. You might discover the next great meme maker amongst these new people coming into the space. That's not, you know, the one thing that I wish that I was good at is making memes. Like I cannot make good memes. Like I understand the structure of how you craft them, but for some reason I'm not good at it. It's definitely not my skill. So I'm glad that there's good people out there that know what they're doing. It's definitely a useful way to communicate and very effective, very efficient way to communicate.
It's important work. It's God's work, making memes.
Oh, for
There's
sure.
a lot of trial and error.
A lot of trial and error. I've tried it a couple
sure.
times. Oh my God. I'm like, it's not for me.
Yeah.
I'll like and retweet. That's it.
Yeah. You put one out there and you think it's the funniest and like nobody, it's just pure.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, all right, man, maybe this isn't for me.
Yeah, it gets 2 likes and then I just throw out hashtag Bitcoin and it gets like 100 likes.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, that's the thing too, right? Maybe it's just like it's too much effort and you're just like, oh man, I just wasted so much time and energy, thought I was doing something good and no one likes it now.
Yeah.
Whereas you could be like increase your time preference, hashtag Bitcoin, and then it's like, or decrease your time preference and the people are loving that.
Yeah,
stuff.
goes viral.
Yeah, no kidding. I had a couple tweets in the last days that I threw out that were like, I put no effort into and they just way overboard. overboard. I don't like it, to be honest.
Sometimes things will take off. I mean, it's really weird because I do a lot of tweeting and it's sometimes I'll write stuff and I'm like, this is going to be good. This is really, people are going to like this.
And
it's
nobody
like
likes it.
20, 30 likes. And then it's like, I just write something up randomly and it's
shit posting or something.
Or one time I did this whole thread. It was this huge, great thread. I was like, oh yeah, people are going to love this. This is really good. And it totally dived. But the thing, part of that too, is with tweeting, you just kind of have to keep
consistently
grinding through consistently also write tweets. Otherwise, you're not going to get better at it. And people, it's almost like people want to see you consistently too, even if they don't like what you wrote in particular that time.
Oh, if I don't tweet for like a day, I get like a bunch of unfollows. Like at least like I've noticed that. And like I got to tweet at like certain times of the day, like engagement's higher, like around noon and around like 5 p.m. are always like the best time to like throw anything out. It's really weird.
I've messed around with time, and sometimes I feel like the timing matters, and other times it's just like it doesn't.
There's no rhyme or reason to it. Yeah, no kidding. So Mac, okay, I'm curious. So you had this job fair, and Dennis and Nick, you can hop into this as well. Strike came out with some phenomenal news, and not only that, Jack Mallers is very open to like Coinbase and anywhere else that if you're buying Bitcoin on any of these exchanges, you're supporting shit coins. Go to Strike. Strike has the lowest fees, and by lowest he means free. What is your opinion on that?
He's coming for him, isn't he?
Oh, he's
definitely look, he's making moves, and I think power to him. If there's I think when you've got the David and Goliath kind of situation, and you're going to bat for the people who are going to provide as much value as possible, and it seems like if you can enter the market and not have to pay those incredible fees that everybody's charging, then it's definitely going to bat. You're definitely going to bat for him. Why not? We've got a video here.
Oh yeah, this one's good. I don't know if you guys have seen.
No, I haven't seen this.
It's pretty good.
My only question is like, did Strike, it almost seems like to me, actually hired like meme creators as like and they're like on the payroll to make memes.
Oh,
like,
for sure.
I think because they're one of the only companies in a space that I've seen where
A+
feels like it feels like they have actual meme makers who are good at it, consistently making memes as part of their advertisement strategy.
Yeah, so from being in like Pomp's course, Dennis, we've come across a couple job listings that are literally, it's like, how submit us your memes. Like we need a meme maker.
Strike?
Not just, I don't know Strike in particular, but a couple companies.
So some people are doing it.
Yeah.
But part of it is I think that
there's one, it was like the salary range was like, 80 to 120K.
Oh yeah. There's no joke.
It was like meme whatever / shit poster, and I was like, just can you imagine? I can imagine like that's like my parents, being like, this is a real thing. People actually do this for their career.
It's funny because like months ago, I was telling people, I was like, dude, Strike is going to absolutely obliterate these exchanges. They're going to totally take them over, and nobody believed me. So it's just fun to actually see this happen. But if you look at this tweet that I put out, I think it's a really interesting way to kind of like look at what's going on in the space and just how deflationary this technology is, and when we interact with it, I put out this tweet is the one above, and it just accurately describes what Jack Mallers has done. And
I know, yeah.
He's wiped out 2 industries with a single app, Bitcoin exchanges and remittance, and it's really incredible to see, because now you start to think like, okay, what else is he going to wipe out next? or who else is going to create an app on the Lightning Network that's going to wipe out an entire industry?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about. Like, I feel like a lot of people are going to, be trying to follow in his steps as opposed to maybe going down the route of the next app or exchange.
So I submitted a couple of resumes to Strike, but it seems like the only people really applying. So for one, it seems like a lot of the new retail money is kind of out of the game. Maybe there's some of it still lingering around, but like everything has like died down a ton over the last week. It seems like last 2 weeks. So like now I think, yeah, oh yeah, which is great. Like somebody sent out a tweet. They're like, "Is crypto Twitter dead or whatever?" Or they might have said Bitcoin Twitter. I don't know. Don't castrate me on that. But I said no. It's just turned into simp Twitter because I guess that's like the thing that's going on right now. I don't know. It's like the whole space has been really weird. But for me, I'm like, okay, like all this new retail money, like they're out. Good thing. If you're wanting to like apply, if you're wanting to work in the space, like now's a perfect opportunity to apply because places are hurting.
Oh, you're saying there's not enough people applying for jobs?
I don't think a lot of these companies can fill the seats that they need. I think the demand is so high that like, granted, a lot of it's kind of some like nitty gritty stuff, but like you got to break in. If you need to break into the industry, like get into some of those nitty gritty jobs.
Right.
Yeah, they were saying at the job fair that look, sometimes when you pivot from one area in the traditional space into a crypto space, you will take a pay hit. But soon enough, if you do find your feet, you find that that pay hit was completely worth it because you then all of a sudden start earning a lot more than you were in the traditional space anyway. So it's kind of like you believe in yourself that you're worth more than the pay cut. And I think at the end of the day, the business also has to take a risk on you, getting you to pivot from the traditional space into crypto. So I can see where the cut comes from, and I can see where some people aren't willing to take that hit. So I guess they're forever, staying in the traditional space. There's probably a lot of people in that spot, going, well, I'm comfortable with this and I don't want to take the cut. And it's like, well, the cut's only temporary, and
Right.
the opportunities are huge.
You're finding out real quick who would have bought Bitcoin back in like 2011 versus like who would have sold it right away as soon as there's a small spike. It's you're always going to be rewarded anywhere with the highest risk. And if you're willing to take it, and a lot of it's situational, like I'm pretty young, like I have a family, but it's a young family and I can afford to take risks. And I have a wife who's also pretty risky on some stuff. So that's a big win. But then I get like there's other people who like they're very high up in their careers. They have 3 kids, they have a mortgage, they still have student loans, like they're suppressed by the fiat system. And they can't make a big switch like that. So I get it. But because you can't sometimes on like some of that you could say like, oh yeah, like the reward's so big, but it's like, okay, how long does one have to budget out to take a pay cut like that? Are we talking a year? Are we talking 2 years? Are we talking 5 years? Maybe a decade?
It's subjective, right? Like, yeah.
It's really interesting that you talk about it, because you're right that this space is growing and there's incredible opportunity going forward, because it's just, it's more or less like looking back at the tech industry and when they were established in Silicon Valley, and there was all of this hype and opportunity and a lot of people were attracted to the space, and a lot of those people didn't get really paid very well in the beginning, but they stuck through and they found the right companies, people that were dedicated, and a lot of those people are they got stock when they decided to work for those companies, or options to buy stock, and so they really massively benefited from sticking it through. But even my own situation, right? Like I spent 500 hours on Clubhouse. I started a podcast. I've written small articles. I'm doing all this work. Like it's an incredible amount of work that I'm doing. And I don't get paid. Like, yeah, some advertisers, like small time advertisers have started to talk to me, but it's like I'm much more focused, like almost like 5 years into the future. Like I don't really care about how much money I make right now, which drives my girlfriend insane. But I really don't care about how much money I make right now, because there is so much potential and opportunity going forward in the future. And this thing is going to absolutely take over the entire planet. We're like 1% of the way down the path. And to be too worried about, how much am I going to make? Well, we're, 10% pay cut. Like I can't do that. Like, okay, well, you really need to be looking further in the future. And if you're young, I don't know if I'm the oldest one here or not, but we're roughly all in the same close age bracket, but we're pretty young. What are you going to lose? Like really, like you're going to miss out on the biggest opportunity in human history. Like just because you have a 10% pay cut, like that's a little short-sighted, but that's also a problem sometimes for young people as well too.
People are stuck in the system, man. Like, I've got a friend that he's about to become a father. And, I tried to tell him, I said, look, I'll front the fee. I said, you got to get in the next cohort. I said, I'll front the fee. And then the next thing that he says is, look, I don't have a functioning computer. And I'm like, oh man, I said, look, borrow one of my computers. And, I tried to even get on a call with him, and he's just so busy working 2 jobs that he can't even entertain the idea.
Yeah.
And it's like, these are the people, because he loves video games, he loves PCs. He's the person that needs to kind of pivot and get this freedom. I know it sounds weird, but it's freedom. And but he can't see that. And I feel like I've let him down a little bit, but at the same time it's like he's got to also make that decision and realize that he's stuck. So
that's the hardest thing to come to terms with when you're trying to talk to like a newcomer into the space, is like realizing like sometimes there's nothing you can say, and it's just 100% up to them to want to take the leap into curiosity.
People need to kind of discover it on their, to an extent. I feel like to really like have skin in the game, you can give them a nudge, but beyond that, what are you going to do?
Yeah, I know, right? Well, and it's I'm still playing with it all the time. It's like, how do I play with it? Because I've had it backfire where like I've got people in the space and now like, dude, I'm buying Dogecoin, dude, I'm buying Cum Rocket, or like, or like last cycle it was like Ethereum Classic, a little bit of Dogecoin. I had some people get into BitConnect, if any of you guys remember
Tron,
that.
dude.
Tron was huge.
Oh man,
Stellar Lumens, Ripple.
XVG was big. Verge, I think it was called.
Yeah.
There was a lot of stuff, man. Yeah, it was wild back then.
And it was just like Dash was huge. I know Monero you could still buy. And like it's now I've been very adamant and upfront, like, hey, like unit bias is real. All these other coins, like maybe 1 or 2, 3 might make it through, and it's not going to be money at the end of the day. You're buying some like venture capital hybrid stock for a centralized company. Don't get sucked into the BS terms that they've stolen from Bitcoin, like it's
I feel
all
Alan, that was great what you said. Repeat that description of what a shitcoin is. It's like hybridized.
A hybridized venture capital stock.
Hybridized venture capital stock. I like that.
That is what it is. That's 100% what it is.
Because it's accurate. I mean, because that's really what they're doing. They're playing like decentralization theater. They're not. These are not actually decentralized entities. And what are they really selling you then? It is a version of it's that their ability to collect capital. They want to accumulate capital, and they want to take advantage of the market. That makes sense. I get it, but I don't want nothing to do with that.
Ooh, Balage is here. Hell yes. Dennis, have you met Balage before?
No. Have I met Balage? Oh, Dennis. Yeah. Okay. Oh, Dennis wasn't part of cohort.
Dennis was not part of cohort, but hey, Balage, what's going on, man?
Hey guys, let me stop my video. I can't believe you guys are doing this. I actually had a meeting scheduled, and then it was a no-show. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna watch a video. I was on the learning channel on Slack, and I was just sucked into this Steve Jobs video that I've watched like 10 times already. But every single time somebody posts it, I have to watch it again. So
what's Steve Jobs? I haven't seen that Steve Jobs video.
Huh?
Which video is it?
Oh, somebody just posted it. Actually, Pam posted it in the Learning channel. It's the video where he talks about brand. I mean, it's
okay,
you know,
okay.
Let me go to YouTube and tell you how many millions of views that one has. Hang on. Yeah, it has 5 million views.
Oh man, I'm gonna pull it up here real quick.
Yeah,
it's a good video.
Yeah, since April 21st, 2013. Let's see who posted it. This one. I mean, this one is posted by actually, it's funny because just this one post has 5 million views, but there's so many people who posted this, that, I think if you add it all up, it has probably 100 million views or something.
This
hey,
one,
Mac,
right?
Unmute. Yeah, that's the one. That's the one. Yeah. So how you guys doing?
We're doing pretty good, Balage.
I guess you've been at this for like 50 minutes now.
To get people to remember much about us. No company. And so we have to
and Dennis, I see you have a nice podcasting setup.
It's
you guys
decent.
can watch this later. It's a pretty long video.
Yeah.
I'm working on it. I'm slowly improving over time. So I'm gonna probably I'm getting pretty big into the podcasting. So I'm gonna redo this whole room. I already painted the wall behind me, but now I gotta rip all this stuff out and kind of redo it, make it look a little halfway decent. But I got the block clock. That's all that fucking matters, right? I'm a real Bitcoiner now.
Yeah, I've seen that clock a few places. So are you gonna paint the wall green then, so that you can do a full green screening automatically?
Oh you maybe, but no, I'm not gonna. I mean, that's not a bad idea actually, but no, I'm just gonna do some just like a wallpaper with a little better design. I plan on having. We just bought this house, so we need to redo this office anyway, so we're gonna redo the cabinetry and stuff like that, just so it actually looks updated. And then what else was I gonna do? I don't know. I just generally want it to just look a little nicer backdrop, but I'm working really hard to upgrade all the different levels of my podcast. So this is one, the design of this, the design of the actual videos themselves, I'm working hard on. And so that's kind of a grind. I'm working with Jacob to do that. So we're going back and forth, slowly making our efforts. The podcast is called Smart People Shit. If you haven't listened to it yet, I have some that I've already put out on Spotify and all the other regular platforms, but I'm moving to YouTube now. So I just did my first YouTube interview with John Vallis, and then with Jeff Booth. So those will be coming out back to back, 1 week's out. But I've done them with Jimmy Song and Corey Clipston, Peter McCormick, all the fun people. So I've had a really great time doing it. It looks like you got a nice mic over there as well too. Do you make appearances, or do you?
Yeah,
I have to learn a little. Tell me about yourself.
No, so actually, it's funny. So when the pandemic hit, so I was actually before the pandemic, I was flying like 300,000 miles a year. Okay. So I think I can go to the moon and back, every year at least once or something like that. But and so when the pandemic hit, I immediately knew that I will have to improve my audio visual setup at home because 75% of communication is nonverbal. So when you can't meet with people, you have to they have to see your hands. They have to. So on the other side here, so this is so I'm talking to a teleprompter right now. So in the Zoom, it's really cool because I just pop up the people on the teleprompter, so I can look at you, and at the same time look at the camera, which gives you this
That's
feel
cool.
that I'm looking at you for real. But it's important because I need to see your reactions real time. See if the camera is there, and you are here, then I look at the camera and I don't see your reactions when I'm saying, or I look at you, but I don't see your reaction. So, and I don't, and I'm not looking at the camera. So you don't have this feel, and humans have this need for the eye-to-eye contact. So I did that, and then I have like, we did a lot of whiteboarding with my customers. So I'm in cybersecurity, blockchain, risk lifecycle management, stuff like that. So I did a lot of whiteboarding sessions with my customers, whether it's for like business processes or engineering whiteboarding sessions. So basically, behind there, the other side of this, there's a screen here, and the other side there is like a big, like 55-inch electronic whiteboard. So I can basically swivel the camera, but the whiteboard also can feed into my ATEM mini switch, which is here, which gives some weird feedback now. But I can basically flip to like the video source is the ATEM mini. I can reduce myself then in the screen, so they could still look at the screen. And I can still look at them, but they actually see what I'm scribbling on the white screen. Ideally, I was actually looking for products where you can whiteboard simultaneously. And there are a couple, like Vibe.us does that, but it's not secure. Samsung Flip is pretty good, but it only works with Cisco WebEx, and even then, they're oversold what their capabilities are. But from a touch perspective, it's awesome. So the whiteboarding, so if they only need to watch me whiteboard, that works well. And then Google has a Jam, like do you guys know the name of the tool? Something Jamboard, maybe. Yeah, I think it's called Jamboard. And the real Jamboard is like $5,000. So like maybe one day I'll spring for it. But even then, it's kind of a little bit harder. But it's good because like on a Jamboard, like I could be on a Google Jamboard, and my audience could still be like on their tablet or whatever, and we could still kind of whiteboard together. But for me, the main reason, just to bring it back to your question, the main reason I started working on my audio visual, and yes, you're sharing the Jamboard, and they only have funky colors, by the way, so it's super expensive, and like I if you can't tell, I'm a black and white guy. So I just like I allow shades of gray, that's it. So I hate when you can buy something only in colors, like bright colors. But anyway, so just to bring it back, I actually then so I first used the lapel mic, and the lapel mic is okay, but the quality is so the problem is that your lapel mic is here, and you may be turning your head and stuff, and so then the sound quality changes. The mic here, like if I turn my head, yes, the sound quality changes, but I know where the mic is, so I can bring back my head to it because mentally I know where it is, and I can set it up in a way that I talk to you. And actually, it's a relatively inexpensive but good quality mic. So
Right.
I actually looked at different ones. So little by little, and then the latest addition to my arsenal, it's really funny, and is this like editing board. Like
Right.
with this, I can actually edit videos much faster because it has like this little wheel. And the funny thing is that you buy this, it's free because you get DaVinci Resolve Studio with it, which is also $300. So it's really cool that, I mean, I sped up like now it's not even worth for me most videos to outsource them because it's so fast to edit with this. The keys are all there. Like it's super fast keys.
What
So that's where
software
I'm
do
at.
you use? I'm stuck with iMovie, and I
So
need to move to something else.
no. So this thing, when you buy this thing, you get DaVinci Resolve Studio,
Gotcha.
the latest. So today
Okay,
is
okay, okay.
17, and it's Black Magic. So, but I have a Mac set up and all that. That works well on PC too, by the way. But so the next thing I'm gonna probably get is like a better streaming. Not it's it's streaming, but not streaming in a sense of streaming to YouTube, but you have to stream the camera feeds, the good quality camera feeds. You need to stream them into your machine. So I'm thinking of buying a Black Magic, but it's $500. So I'm telling myself, how many sets I can stack for $500, and I'm like, I'll wait, I'll hold off a little bit. So that's
You'll have to tell me what the so the camera setup you have is. There's a camera, and then there's a screen like a teleprompter, so that you can look and see me at the same time that you're also like talking to the camera.
Yeah.
Is that what the way it's set up?
Yeah.
What is that? Could you tell me what that
Yeah, so actually it took a while. I can save you a lot of time because it took a while to get the right setup. So first you need to pick a fairly big teleprompter so you can put like a 13-inch screen underneath. They usually sell them as iPad teleprompters, but it needs to work with the large iPad. And then what you do is you buy a super cheap, like these LCD monitors that you can get that they sell for, like, you know, gaming monitors, but not gaming as in the big gaming monitors, but these portable gaming monitor. Like if you go on vacation and you know you're so hooked to your PS5 that you have to take the PS5 with you, right? And and you have to take a
Got
monitor
some problems
with you.
there if you're going on vacation with your PS5.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll actually try to lift it so you get a feel. Do you see how it looks, kind of?
Oh yeah. It's
Okay,
super
so
thin.
it's just like a which part was that? That was the screen.
This was the screen. This was the monitor that reflects on the teleprompter, because instead of reflecting on the teleprompter some real text that I could push from an iPad, I actually have a cheap screen, like it's $100 screen, you know, or something like that. It's not an expensive screen. I mean, it's a reasonable screen. I wanted to get a 4K, but the problem that the 4K screen, it's actually sitting here. So the 4K screen, that was my favorite, but it was just slightly too wide for this teleprompter, and I wasn't gonna buy a new teleprompter, so I just got a slightly smaller screen. But the problem is that the drawback, I shouldn't say problem, but the drawback is that it's a 1080 as opposed to a 4K. So I would have preferred to have a 4K setup.
Yeah.
Hang on. Okay. So that was so the teleprompter, and then so the other thing is you have to have then a multi-monitor setup, because the monitor, it has to be driven by the same laptop on which the Zoom call is, right? Because otherwise you can't project part of the Zoom screens.
I mean, I don't. Well, I'll probably have to like DM you and get some details from you or something like that, because the idea of using a teleprompter I hadn't thought of, but that's a really smart way to improve the quality of what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
I'm moving, especially because I'm moving to YouTube. I'm doing all these video things, and I think that a lot of people, they end up doing this kind of like, oh, I'm gonna do the camera over here on the side, and kind of like almost what you're doing, where you're working and you're just talking. But then I noticed that when you started looking at the screen and talking, I was like, that's really interesting. That has like a very good feel to it. But you're able to see me and look at the camera at the same time, which I think as I move into YouTube, I plan on doing kind of like also potentially like a news segment type show as part of my my channel. And so I don't want to talk about it too much longer, because we probably should get back to the Bitcoin conversations or whatever. But
we're all good.
But I would love to be able to I would love to be able to DM you or email you and ask you, for just the teleprompter setup, if you could.
Yeah, but I think everybody's interested. Mac, I know he loves that kind of stuff.
Okay. Absolutely. What I was going to do, because Dennis hasn't actually attended the cohort yet, he might have to join so that he can learn.
Yeah.
Dennis is going to try to orange pill everybody in that class. So he's going to try and
perfect.
Yeah, he'd be like Kody, just taking down everybody.
Balage, I know how you feel. So Balage is a fantastic coder, does a lot of stuff with like NFTs, works a little bit on Ethereum and all of that. I think Dennis and Balage
I actually
can talk about
so
that
just so you know, I actually I consider myself just a temporary Ethereum user, because I do not believe in Ethereum, and I don't believe. I believed in Ethereum when it was the original Ethereum, and
the DAO hack messed it up.
And then the hack, I mean Ethereum Classic and all that, yeah. But so the Ethereum 2.0 is going to proof of stake. And so it's going to be rigged by financial companies. And actually you can already see the financial companies flocking to Ethereum from Bitcoin, because they see that they will be able to manipulate things more, that it's more classical. So Ethereum to me is kind of like Microsoft versus Linux being Bitcoin. It's like the evil empire. Yeah. But temporarily Ethereum is a good playground to play with some technologies that are not yet mainstream on Bitcoin. So the analogy is not a good analogy, because it's Ethereum and Bitcoin are just so different. But honestly, I mean, if you wanna get my philosophy, I'm not kidding myself. I don't think, like people say, I'm gonna die on that hill, and I think that's what it is. We're gonna die on that hill. I sorry to break it to you guys, but Bitcoin is not gonna make it. Bitcoin is not gonna make it just simply because there is too much incentive in humans to cheat, too much incentive in humans to control, to keep the status quo and all that. So I think Bitcoin had a fantastic run. I'm not abandoning it. I believe in it, but I'm not kidding myself that this is going to win. You know, it's more like, you know, we will be remembered as the rebels of our age, you know, and somehow,
What's your argument around why you think Bitcoin won't succeed? I mean, I see your points
because
on
it's too idealistic,
Ethereum.
like any idealistic thing. Like you look at Jesus, you look at Mohammed, you look at you know, communism, the real communism, and I'm talking about what we call communism. I was born in communism. That's nothing to do with the communist ideals. Or you look at Marxism, all that. I'm not a communist. I'm not a Marxist. I'm the opposite. I hate those guys. But when you look at just purely the philosophical ideals, where, you know, we're acting like good humans, it doesn't work. Okay, none of the ideal thing. The only way Bitcoin will work is if humanity is wiped out. This way it will work, because computers don't have that stupid brain saying, oh well, let's cheat, or let's you know, oh, it's better if there's inflation or things like that. Like, computers understand, it's mathematical. So if computers take over, uh, then I think they will pick Bitcoin, because mathematically and from an equality and a predictability perspective, rationally, Bitcoin has to be the winner. But humans are not rational. That's what I'm saying. Humans want to cheat. Humans tend to very often not look at the common good. Look, we're still burning fossil fuels. Everybody rationally knows that burning fossil fuels is like wiping your butt with $100 bills, but everybody does it anyway. Why? Because it will not impact them. It will impact the future generation. It's like the guy who throws trash out of his car. He doesn't give a shit because it's not impacting him. It's impacting the guy next to him, or it's impacting the people who will go down that road later, who have to go down a trashy road, right?
Yeah.
And that's basically, you know, there is a predominance of humans that misbehave or cheat. And that's why I think that kid yourself not, you know, there's too much incentive for Bitcoin to fail.
Yeah. Balage, I feel like, I mean, I very much hope you're wrong. Like, I feel like that's one of like the best
I hope I'm wrong too. I hope I'm wrong too. But I just you need to be realistic too. I'm not saying I'm going to change the course.
Well, I guess
I'm
just
not going
like
to be, you know.
my question would be like, okay, so the, you know, the theory is that humans want to cheat, and that's why Bitcoin will fail, and a system that allows humans to cheat will be successful, except that I don't want to be a part of a system where my money can be cheated. And and for the first time in history, we have the option to choose the type of money that we want to use. And so I will choose to continue to use Bitcoin. And I think that that's kind of where some of my belief that Bitcoin will ultimately be successful is, because it's a better system for the end user. And although the institutions might not like it, individual people are going to choose Bitcoin over time because it's a superior form of money. I mean, it's the best form of money that we've ever had on this planet. Everything else is just, what did you say, Alan? It's a hybridized.
It's a hybridized venture capital corporate stock.
Yeah. I don't see them competing with Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
I think that anybody who's tried to be money has failed in their effort to compete with Bitcoin. And, you know, things like Ethereum and Cardano and Polkadot, they're not even trying or attempting to really compete in the sense that they want to compete to be real money. They're really changed their narrative to be more so focused on smart contracts, dApps, Web 3.0. But I just don't think that they can get there ultimately, because they're underpinned by an inferior monetary policy. And so their token, their coin, will really have no value. And eventually it'll trend towards just being a commodity or its utility. So the supply and demand, just like lumber, it'll cause the price to go up and down. I think if they're successful all the time, But ultimately, users and people will not want to hold those things. They will want a stable form of money that consistently goes up over time, not something that's just like bouncing all over the place based on supply and demand.
Yeah, Dennis, I want to ask you. I feel like, I mean, I've heard tons of just terrible anti-Bitcoin arguments, during my time in this space. But I feel like, what Balage posed to us is, I feel like that's one of the, if not maybe the best argument against Bitcoin that like I've heard. I feel like that's just like
that
Well, I was
humans are
gonna
dumb.
say-
Humans are dumb.
Yeah.
Humans
not
are
dumb.
humans are
No,
Hu-
no.
humans- no,
It's
I'm-
not. It's not that humans are dumb. Is there's two currently today we have two major classes, three major classes, I would say. No, two major classes, and I would say a minority. You, Dennis, the opinion you said, which I concur with, and I'm 100% with you. I want to state that. Okay, just to be clear, I'm with you. We'll die on the hill together, whatever. But happily, because it's much better worth dying on the hill for the good fight than being rich and enjoying a life of emptiness, right? So I mean that's basically what I feel, and I feel that you guys are like that. But we may be just too early. I think eventually proof of work has to win, because on the long run, proof of stake has no incentive for innovation. When you have no incentive for innovation, you have no long term. Long term doesn't exist because you stay in the cave. You're still a caveman. You only need to take the analogy, you extrapolate it to the extreme, and no innovation means that we're still in the cave. Okay. Obviously, we're not in the cave, so we know that any technology that doesn't incentivize innovation, is doomed on the long run. On the short run, however, there is a short run effect of incentive for Ethereum, for example, or proof of stake in general. Ethereum, because right now it's not yet proof of stake, first of all. Okay, so Ethereum hasn't switched to be proof of stake yet. The real beginning of the end for Ethereum is going to be the day they really switch to proof of stake, to pure proof of stake, or maybe even just hybrid proof of stake. I don't know. And remember that proof of work is already inherently a hybrid proof of stake, because proof of work, if you have a ton of money, you can invest in mining, you can invest in innovation. So you still can stake your money, but you stake it into innovation. Okay. But if you remove innovation, you're just proof of stake, you're pure proof of stake. So long run, I just don't think it's in my lifetime, honestly. I think it's not changing fast enough that it's not a reason for me to change. But for example, the smart contract for our certificates for the course is going to stay in Ethereum for probably a few years. Okay. I mean, maybe less than a few years, but I think that for the next few years, it's going to stay on Ethereum because that's the place for smart contracts today. And yeah, Cardano, Polkadot, ADA, Eva, whatever, all those things exist, but they don't have the network effect. Okay. So the only place where I would put a smart contract, if it's not on Lightning, then it's on Ethereum. Okay. And that's basically, and a lot of people are saying, okay, but another one will emerge. But really, what's the narrative of this? Oh, the gas fees are too high. But you see how much they fixed the gas fees, like just from 2 months ago. Like when we started working on the smart contract for the crypto certificate. We have to call it certificate now, according to Pomp.
Oh.
So for this certificate, we basically were looking at the not being able to do it for less than $150 because of the exorbitant gas fees, and just deploying the diploma was going to be a full ETH in itself. I mean, deploying the DApp and the smart contract on the DApp. So the smart contract that's powered by the DApp, whatever, you guys know what I mean. So it's just 2 months later, we're able to bring you the certificate for just under $75. Okay. So when they have a problem in Ethereum, I mean, fixing it in 2 months, I think it's pretty fast, honestly, in software development terms. And in the Bitcoin world, it's way too fast. Like in Bitcoin, if there's a problem like that, it will take 2 years to fix. But that's what's fantastic about Bitcoin too, because you have this inertia. Like you don't just nitty-witty bend with the wind, and change with the wind, I should say, or change turncoat and whatever. So so that's the only reason it's not that I don't think Bitcoin or proof of work doesn't have a long-term future. I just think that it's gonna outpace, because right now the three big categories of people that I wanted to mention to you. So we agreed the minority is us, is the guys who die on the hill. One big majority is the people who don't want to think for themselves, okay, and the other big majority of the people who want to manipulate the people who don't think for themselves, and they have the power and the money, okay, and they don't have an interest in an equalitarian system, because the equalitarian system will not allow them to dominate those who abdicate their rights to for others to think for them. And that's really, so I'm not saying humans are dumb, okay, I'm just saying that the large chunk of humans abdicate their rights, and it's not a monolith. So today, I'm sure that each of you at some point in your life decided that somebody else can think for you in some topic. It could have been your teacher at school, it could have been your lawyer when you had a car accident, it could have been. So we migrate between these groups, okay, and while we're in the rebel group in Bitcoin, we may be completely in the guy who's driving speed limit and everything, for example, when it comes to the rules of the road, okay, and you let the cops and the government do the thinking for you, because you're like, oh, I'm just gonna go with what they tell me, okay. So it's not, yeah.
No, I get, I'm following you. I think what essentially what you're saying is lower your time preference. Like Bitcoin's not going to win overnight. Which I don't think that at all. I mean, the way I see things playing out is like these corporations aren't going to go down. These governments aren't going to go down and just surrender their monetary rights, their power over to Bitcoin overnight. There's no way. They see where the trend's going and they're going to attempt to seize control. I think with some of these altcoins like Ethereum, Polkadot. We already see like Visa and MasterCard and some of these other banking structures are partnering with some of these companies. Swift just partnered with Chainlink, saw that. So they're looking to keep up. And then we see this emergence of like CBDCs over in China. We just recently had our Secretary of Treasury talk about how we need to upgrade our banking infrastructure and payment basis with CBDCs and all of that. And it's a great way to continue to control the masses. But the way I see the game theory play out, it's like, and you brought up the idea of like religions, like a lot of these religions, like even though they may not be as popular today, like they're still alive. Their idea and philosophy is still around. A lot of people find comfort in those ideas and philosophies. And just like us Bitcoiners, we find a lot of comfort in the ideas of freedom and democracy and like an open source project that nobody can control. No government can come in and print more of it or control the currency, with inflate it with interest rates and all that, which is why it's so attractive. But long term, the way I see like the game theory play out is like when you introduce things like CBDCs and like the smart people, or I guess the more curious types, start to see all these spending stipulations and like, well, you can spend the CBDC here, but you can't spend it on that, or oh, you have to spend it in this X amount of time, and then you have like all these quote unquote DeFi smart contract platforms, like they're automating all these jobs out. And now you have an even bigger divide of rich and poor. And like, if you want to participate in like smart contracts, you have to have an X amount of capital and everything. Like, I think inevitably people are going to look for safe havens to store their money, and it's going to start out with the people that are more financially savvy. We already see that right now, especially some of these big investment firms, guys like Greg Foss, guys like Ray Dalio, that they're coming and finding, and they're looking into Bitcoin. They're saying, okay, this is the safest place for me to store my wealth right now. Aside from the volatility, there's no central entity that can control the money. I think given enough time, and especially we got to see how things play out with El Salvador. I think if more countries start hopping on, just in spaces. I've talked to Lord Fusitua a ton, who's introducing legislation in Tonga. I think Panama and Colombia are pretty big in moving forward. very curious to see what Jack does with Square over in Nigeria and stuff. But it's really hard to see how this whole game theory is going to play out. But in a broad sense, I see there's going to be the small group of people, the corporations and the people currently in power that try to seize and maintain power. And then you just have like, you have this vehicle, which is Bitcoin, for the masses to just elect to opt out. And if the masses elect to opt out, how are you going to maintain power? Because you can have it'll be like North Korea, where North Korea has just this immense amount of control over their people. You have like people want to leave, people gravitate towards the US right now because it's under the guise of being the freest, most open marketplace in the world. But if you have places like El Salvador where they've given up their monetary policy to a currency that has no control, like myself included and a number of other people are already looking to make a move down there. And you have more countries that do that, like it's going to be one of those things. If you have wealth and you have bright minds influx into these areas, like eventually you gotta make the argument that good's going to overcome evil, wouldn't you say?
Well, but that's kind of
or am I being
tough
too
to
hopeful
say.
here? Am I being too hopeful here?
No. But
Balage?
putting it good versus evil, I think it's not good versus evil. I think it's human nature, and we just need to take into the equation human nature. I don't know, Dennis, what you think?
When it comes to Bitcoin, I think that's part of the reason why I am so hardened in my belief that it will succeed is because of human nature. Throughout history, we've seen humans will always gravitate towards the best form of money and will always work to accumulate that form of money. We saw that in the 1500s with the gold florin. We've seen it in general throughout time that when given the opportunity, we will choose to accumulate whatever is the most sound form of money. And in my opinion, Bitcoin is the soundest form of money. And I believe it's Gresham's law that says that good money will chase out bad money. And so I really see, because of Bitcoin's soundness as a form of money, and also because of its the NGU technology, so to speak, which in my opinion was built in intentionally to hijack human beings' greed. I think that we're naturally very greedy, and Bitcoin, although there are periods when it drops in price, generally speaking, over time, it gains value significantly. And I think that eventually human beings will learn their lesson. It takes 20 years minimum for human beings to adapt to a new form of technology. And we're changing the oldest form of technology in human history, which is, arguably, which is which is money. And we've had money for 10,000 years. And for 10,000 years, people in power have opted to corrupt and manipulate the monetary supply. And I think that for the first time ever now, we have a money that can't be corrupted. And as I said earlier, users will be attracted to that. People will be attracted to that. And inevitably, I think Bitcoin wins because of the fact that we're always going to seek the best money, and we're greedy little shits. And we're going to want to have the best form of money that not only we can store our value in, but also pumps in price. It's like we almost need to be retrained. And I think that Bitcoin will retrain society, in my opinion.
Dennis,
but it's go ahead, Nick.
Let you finish your thought. I was just going to say, like, basically what you're describing is like, I don't know if you've read the Alex Gladstein piece in Bitcoin magazine, that Bitcoin is a Trojan horse for freedom. And I'm like, that's basically what it is. It's like you're incentivized like for your own personal greedy gains. But at the same time, like it's this Trojan horse, and on the inside is freedom and something that you can't fuck with. So you start like I feel like how at least most people I feel like I've talked to in Bitcoin, like that's how you get interested into it. Like I was interested in it first because I wanted to make money on it, number go up, but now my viewpoint of it has completely full 180 to believing in it far beyond that.
Yeah. I mean, the NGU tech attracts people to the space. people come in for other reasons too, but inevitably once you own Bitcoin and the shit goes through the roof, you own so much that you're almost like forced to learn more about it because it becomes a dominant percentage of your wealth. And if you're 5% in Bitcoin, you're going to learn a little bit, but all of a sudden if it turns 5% turns into 50% of your net worth, you're like, okay, I really need to learn a lot about this because I got a significant amount of skin in the game. And that's what Mac was talking about earlier too, is like you almost like need that skin in the game with the course. It's almost good that it's a decent amount of money. And I feel the same way too. Like if I was ever to make a course, like I'm not going to charge like $10. Like I would charge what it's worth, but I would charge enough to where people have to have some level of skin in the game. It's really important. But yeah, I see Bitcoin as the ultimate winner in all of this. Just like with the internet, people will opt to choose open protocols, and I see Bitcoin as the most open protocol. NGU technology is there. Sound money is there. There's a bunch of reasons why I think it's the ultimate winner, but I'm always open to have the conversation around the reasons why people think Bitcoin would fail. But I guess I just feel differently than Balage. I feel like I'm on the opposite side. You say Bitcoin won't work because of human beings. I think it will work exactly for that reason. Because human beings are very consistent in their behavior. And I think that because of the consistency, that's why I see Bitcoin just totally taking over everything.
Mac, what's your opinions on all this? I love this conversation. Right. I love this conversation. It's a great conversation to have because it's Balazs, I've never heard that viewpoint before, or I haven't heard anybody at least explain it as well as you have. And I appreciate the argument. I think I still have to lean with Dennis on for the same argument you made, and Dennis said very well. I believe it's the same argument, but on the flip side. I think I believe in people to want to make that decision that I'm going to opt for better money.
Yeah, so there is actually the argument that goes with you is what I think the person who formulated the best is Ayn Rand, in maybe Fountain Pen, or actually in the other book she says there's this famous statement, "Where's John Galt?" You guys heard that? Okay, you should look up this sentence. Who is John Galt? But really, the underlying question is where did he go? And that's basically, so I feel sometimes that Bitcoiners are like John Galt. I should start calling Pomp John Galt at some point. But it's I'm just having a blank on the book that familiarizes it. But Ayn Rand, you guys heard of her?
Yeah.
Let me see. So you can look up, and maybe you can find while I'm talking the book. It looks like, Alan, you're researching.
Atlas Shrugged?
Atlas Shrugged is the book, and there was also a movie series made out of it. So I recommend it, although I haven't seen the movies, but the book is so for me, the book hit really home because I grew up under communism. And that's why I have a different perspective than you guys. I hope you're right, and I certainly think that you have to bring that energy that you do. But if you read that book, or you just maybe read a summary of the book, maybe it's available on Blinkist. I mean, spoiler alert. Okay, essentially, people opt out of the broken system in her book, and Bitcoin is a way to opt out of the broken system. And then the premise of the book is that the broken system will collapse on itself. In reality, the broken system somehow keeps getting another kick, another shot in the arm. We just perpetuate that broken system as humans. And that's why I'm saying, so in reality, what I see is that, yes, Bitcoin allows some people to opt out of the system. In a way, Elon Musk is similar, because he's like, I still would like humanity to be okay. I still would like the Earth to be okay, but I'm hedging my bets with Mars. So it's almost like Bitcoin is another way to hedge your bets. I'm not sure that the true powerful the powers to be on the planet will truly allow that to happen. I mean, I've seen too much, that I just when El Salvador was announcing what they did, I was expecting U.S. tanks to actually, but maybe they are actually working on finding a way to get that president off. So it's way too early in that stage. But so far, anybody who threatened the dollar, and Naib was kind of cautious. They didn't say that the U.S. dollar is no longer their currency. They said they're adding Bitcoin as an alternative currency, right? So he's hedging his bets. I don't know if this is going to fly with the U.S. government, but because the country is so small and it's inconsequential, they really don't have any natural resources that the U.S. would be concerned about. They may actually be left alone. I know in Libya or in Iraq that was not the case, So they had natural resources and they were not allowed to opt out of the dollar.
Yeah, we fought wars over that.
Exactly.
Literally. So okay, but before we go, I want to stick on this point here real quick. So there's a lot of talk about some of these energy companies potentially pricing their energy in Bitcoin. And the reason why you could fight a war, I think, in Iraq and Libya over potentially pricing oil in euros is because you can go and shut. I mean, you could theoretically go fight a war and shut down euros, but like you can't go into a country and shut down Bitcoin. Like you'd have to, like, the amount of energy and effort required to take every miner and node off the network is so, you'd have to take down the entire internet. And even still, I think it would still survive.
No, it's actually a very fragile network. I mean, in reality, people think that it's very robust, and it has robustness, but at the same time, enough coordinated attacks against it would yield a weakening of the network, very significant, and also would yield the fact that the everyday person, like Comcast, can easily shut down your ability to run a node. Any US ISP. So if the US Congress brings a law that that the ISPs are not allowed to let nodes to communicate, then they can filter you out, and you can build countermeasures to that, but those countermeasures are not going to be practical for the everyday person. Okay, so a hacker can get around any measures that an ISP would do against them, but everyday person or on your iPhone, I mean, yes, on my router I can certainly set up VPN store, all sorts of things to get around limitations. But already on my iPhone, like my wallet on my iPhone, it's going to be a whole different thing. So now I'm only accessing layer 2, but they can. So the thing is that the governments can actually hurt Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies in general if they really wanted to. It's not an impenetrable fortress. The other the other aspect of it is frankly that people don't update. Those are servers. Okay, all those nodes, all those machines. Like, how many people in this group? I mean, we're only 5 or 6 now, but how many people have installed a Bitcoin node?
I just got my
1,
umbrella in
2, 3.
I just got my
All right.
umbrella in like
all of us,
2 weeks,
all of us did.
2-3 weeks ago.
So good. So actually, I didn't raise my hand. Me too. So all of us. I don't know, James, if you raise your hand, but you're off camera, so maybe you can raise your hand with the Zoom tool. So basically, when was the last time you updated your node? When was the last time
I
you
assume
updated?
mine was
I think
pretty
it was like
updated.
a week ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
a
have to
week
push.
ago.
You have to push
Okay.
the update. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, you have to remember to update it, and basically it's just a computer. So chances are that your node already came hacked, or that it was already hacked in in the time between, you know, you applied the update, etc. So it's just protecting this network is not you know, we can't even protect our country yet. I mean, I sorry, I know some of you are not American, but I'm speaking from the U.S. perspective. Like, our businesses are fighting foreign government armies alone, you know, alone, you know, kind of like in the movie Red Dawn. You guys are probably too young for Red Dawn, but it's, have you anybody heard of Red Dawn?
The original's better than the remake, I will say.
Oh, I don't know if I didn't know there was a remake, but yeah. But it's still a ridiculous movie, but it's a good illustration where you know, somehow average Americans fight back against the Russian army. I mean, I can tell you in real life they don't stand a chance, and that's what's happening in real life. Our businesses have to fight against the Russian army, and they don't stand a chance. And so the Bitcoin nodes, you know, again, guys who are running professional mining operations with professional security like Pomp or others, yes, of course, you know, they have in general proper cybersecurity. But I got to tell you, even people who spend millions of dollars on cybersecurity and best of breed tools, they get hacked. So it's not as simple. And just all I want to say, it's not as simple.
So couldn't you make the argument though that like there's one of my biggest things has been, it's been an effort that a lot of people need to be educated. And while not everyone might keep their node updated, the incentive for miners to remain secure is so great because of the capital reward at hand for them. And then as far as like the nodes go, it's a numbers game, I think. So yeah, you might have an X amount of nodes that fall out of sync with the block or aren't aren't updated. I haven't looked at the numbers or the charts. I should probably do that because it's pretty interesting that you bring that up. I'm sure there's something out there that represents it. But I think there's enough people out there that do keep their nodes up to date. And I think that the argument was like the Comcast could come and shut down your node. They definitely could. I mean, obviously they could. You would know way better than I, Balage. I'm not going to try and argue technicals on that. That's not my forte at all. But where I would potentially disagree would be that if I almost want to use like the North Korean firewall in the internet. Yeah, a country could do that, but now they're setting themselves up for potentially being at disadvantage for, let's say, I mean, I don't see Russia and China coming out the gate being big proponents of Bitcoin immediately, because that would mean that they would have to surrender their own currency and control. But the biggest advantage China and Russia has to doing something like that would be the ability to step out of the grasp or grips of the US dollar. I think that would be like their nuclear war essentially against the US dollar. But this has always been like like this isn't like trickle down in economics. Everything's from ground up. So most communities are going to be using Bitcoin, especially in places like Venezuela, Argentina, Turkey, where their currencies are so unstable. It's more rational for them to use a currency like Bitcoin. And no one's going to bother them for it because it really doesn't make a big difference on the global monetary system as a whole. But eventually you have to think at some point as like where these struggling countries exist, eventually it's going to have to tip the scales. And then I think we will see a crackdown at kind of the sorts that you're talking about. But that's all the more reason why it's really important to be vocal and educate people, I think, on the things and the concerns that you're throwing out there, Balage. Because if not, then yeah, I agree. The whole system's going to lose. But I think there's enough of us out there to keep it alive. I certainly want to keep it alive.
It's just gonna be interesting to see how it plays out, and I think that one of the things that everyone needs to be careful about is that the ascension of Bitcoin cannot happen at the expense of the weakening of America. because America is a power that is needed for balancing all the other powers to have an equilibrium in the world. If America goes away, just like if China were to go away, we would have a power vacuum, and it would be bad. So it has to be disruptive, but moderately disruptive. It can't, like upset the apple cart, because that would cause like unpredictable consequences that it's like the be careful what you wish for type of situation. So and I would say that the other two big powers, China and Russia, are extremely smart and clever powers. So this is a very interesting game that's being played, and people tend to look at many moves at face value when you have to look at it as a chess game. Okay, so if you think about it, you guys all know how to play chess, basic chess, right? So there's like maybe 7 different types of pieces, and then each piece how they can move, and you learn that in a couple of hours. That didn't make you a chess master. So really what's about chess is how you can think several moves ahead and discovering patterns and understanding the strategy of your opponent and thwart it before their strategy is unavoidable. Like, a chess master, after a few moves, they would tell you, okay, now I'm going to do a checkmate in 7 moves. And there's nothing you can do to avoid it, because he already knows that no matter what you do, he's going to have checkmate in 7 moves. Okay. So you don't want to do be in that situation, because at that point, no matter what you do, it's you lost the game. So when people, criticize China for shutting down miners, or I don't know, I don't have an example with Russia, but when people just take every step at face value, I think it's a naive approach, because you got to look at maybe the longer term. Like, you got to see, okay, China shut down the miners, but overall actually it's a good move, because they mostly shut down the mining of Bitcoin with fossil fuels. So it has a multiple positive effect, because 1, fossil fuels stop being burned, so it's better for the environment. 2, China's wealth remains in the ground, because fossil fuels can be much better leveraged to be a carbon fiber based, good stuff, and medical industry, you can use carbon and all that. So and then the third one is now Bitcoin gets will be able to get a better name with more renewable, higher proportion of renewables. So sometimes people take some moves face value and think that it's against the interest of some group, when it actually supports their interest. Okay. And so I would say that, to me, Chinese are extremely smart. They have outlasted everybody. For example, the Chinese Communist Party is the longest lasting party in power. Okay, so anybody who would discount them and say they make mistakes or they make bad moves, I would say think twice. They have a track record that proves you wrong. And same thing for Russia. Russia has been a world power for well over 100 years. Well over 100 years. I mean, maybe several hundred years. You have seen the UK rise and fall. You had seen France rise and fall, Spain rise and fall, Portugal rise and fall, and you have Russia, China, and the youngest power really is America. So I think whatever we do and however we do things, we gotta preserve and cherish, this American system. And I think that when Pomp or others criticize it, I always take the criticism with a grain of salt, because I know that deep down they're patriots. Pomp has given his blood for his country. He lost friends, in the battle for his country. So he's not anti-American. He just really believes in the next step in finance and the evolution of finance without causing damage to his country, right? So just want to be clear on that. And that's my perception. Okay, I'm not a spokesperson for anybody here.
No, I'm
I mean,
a 100% on board with you. I don't want to ever come off like I'm not pro-American. I'm just anti-federalist banks. I'm anti our current monetary system. I love America, very pro-America. But I think corporations have really gouged and bent over a lot of hardworking Americans, because at the end of the day, 1%, the 1% doesn't make up America. It's the 99% that make up America. And while they might be deciding policy and world forum, at the end of the day, you don't have a country if you don't have the people. Pure and simple.
So there was a bunch of different stuff you talked about there, and I love the conversation. I think the theory around, I'm going to go back to the nodes, but the theory around a way you could attack Bitcoin, the network itself. Yeah, I mean, you could have a coordinated attack where a lot of the different state actors work together to co-opt nodes. I mean, ultimately, I don't see them being able to stop Bitcoin even with this style of an attack, because even if in the short term it would cause problems, yeah, it would be, you know, the network would be difficult to use unless you decided to, you know, use the new network that they're trying to create. Essentially, is what would happen. They would co-opt enough nodes, and then they could start to censor transactions or make adjustments to the code. Specifically, it would be bad if they made adjustments to the consensus protocol. But ultimately, if they did that, any major changes would be a hard fork, and the other nodes out there that would survive, because I don't think you can 100% co-opt the entire network. That would be the level of cooperation that would take. I just don't see it happening. I don't think you're going to get China, Russia, USA, and pretty much every country in the world to coordinate that style of 100% attack on the network. And ultimately, the nodes that would survive, they don't have to go onto the new China network. They don't have to go on the new USA network, or whoever co-ops the nodes. So Bitcoin would survive just in the same way that the rebellion always survives. Like, it can go underground, and it will. And ultimately, you can't. Ultimately, no matter how hard the evil empire tried to destroy the rebellion, there were times when the empire was successful, right, in pushing them back. But you really can't destroy a rebellion. Somehow they always seem to survive, just like we see in like even if countries we don't like or are not friends with, like Afghanistan. Like, ultimately it breaks down into guerrilla warfare, and yeah, maybe it will be a difficult time, or maybe some people will leave the network, or maybe the price will go down, but inevitably it will survive, and it will be able to outlast any form of government. That's kind of my perspective on the nodes itself. As far as America is concerned, I actually see a pretty bright future for Bitcoin and the United States. I believe that the federal banking system has really placed itself so far away from average Americans and from the government itself. I mean, it's a totally separate entity. And I think that people are starting to wake up to the way our money is being debased and how horrible that is for us. And also this idea that we need to be the national reserve currency of the world. It helps those in power. It helps the elite. It helps multinational corporations. It helps the banks, but it ultimately does not help the average American. It does not help middle America. When you are the reserve currency of the world, it makes your exports very expensive. This causes all sorts of problems with industry and making jobs go away because nobody's buying our exports. So that kind of destroys the middle class of America. In general, I think the dollar really has turned into this thing where it's like, oh, we need to be patriotic, we need to like the dollar, but we don't really control the dollar very much anymore. And I think that can be seen as like very similar to the reasons why we left Europe in the first place, or England, because we wanted to separate we wanted to separate church from state. And I think there's some parallels now where we will separate money from state. I also see inflation or money creation debasement as as an invisible tax. And America, once again, fought a war to separate itself from a power that was taxing them without representation. And I see that same thing kind of playing out with the Fed and the money printing right now. So I don't know. I really see Bitcoin is actually very truly American and aligns with American ideology. And I think that as time goes on, you'll see more and more senators, you'll see more and more representatives adapt or adopt Bitcoin. We already see that with Senator Loomis. And I think more and more people in government will realize that we do need to kind of get away from the monetary policy that we don't really control. I mean, it's kind of insane if you think about it. I just think more and more Americans will be woken up to this. And I think Bitcoin will be good for America. I don't think it will destroy America. I think it will actually rebuild America in the sense that you're going to rebuild the middle class. You're going to rebuild industry. It's going to give people everything they want. Housing is going to get cheaper because people don't have to store their wealth in the homes or real estate. Employees will actually have a wage that isn't getting debased on a regular basis. It brings back saving. I mean, there's so many things I think that Bitcoin fixes in the United States that I think inevitably, although it's hard to give up that power, it's hard to give up that control. I don't think we really have an option. And inevitably, because I think the government will realize that we don't have a choice, I also see America as a highly adaptable nation. I think that's part of the reason why we have been able to stay in power for so long. And when given the, do you want to continue forward? Do you want to be a powerful country, or do you want to have everything stripped away from you? I see us as adapting into the future. And also we're just a technology-based nation. So I think we're going to not have too difficult of a transitionary period from the old world to the new world. Hope all that
Mac,
came out
you've been
right.
pretty silent. What are your thoughts?
This has been really, really powerful. Hearing your perspective, Balage, and then everybody else's. We were just having a chat about how important it is to have counter arguments for everything. And I think you have probably single-handedly provided the most value to everybody here, mainly because we're in a mindset, right? And we want Bitcoin to survive. We want Bitcoin to work for everybody, but it's going to take different mindsets who still believe in what we believe in. Like, you've stated your case, Balage, that you will die on the hill with us, and you still want it to work. But in reality, you work in insecurity. You have to consider all vectors in order to understand how it can become successful. You've taken in so much, obviously, during your time in cybersecurity, to understand that you've even given advice probably to companies, and they've said, thank you very much, we won't patch that up, and then all of a sudden something has happened. So there are things where you will try to help, and I think it's up to us to interpret that and to understand how can we be part of that solution as well. Because ultimately, if that narrative does come true, what did we do? Did all we do is sit back and go, well, I believe it's going to work, therefore it will? Or are we going to formulate solutions that actually counter what you've productively brought to the table, and essentially be one step, like you say, play chess? Alan, Dennis, Nick, now we're playing chess. Now we're creating solutions that are actually putting us in the Balage mindset. So now we're like Bitcoin maximalists that have a master's in absolutely, every single vector that has come through. And so I think ultimately you've offered a very challenging perspective. And then Dennis has provided just some powerful, rebuttals, but at the same time, we all want the same outcome.
Kody's in here. Kody and Balage might get into it a little bit here.
I tried to bring attention. I tried to bring attention to this call, and Kody showed up.
So
jump on.
Oh man, I don't know how I even give Kody the rundown on the conversation we've been having here.
Damn, did he hear what I said, or
I don't think so.
How much did you hear that? How much did you hear that, Kody?
No, I just came in like 5 seconds ago, man.
Oh, damn.
So, in a nutshell, where Dennis and I are saying Bitcoin will inevitably win because humanity will choose it. Humanity's greedy and wants to store their money in the safest store of value out there. Balage is saying that for the same argument, but the flip side of that humanity's so greedy that these corporations won't relinquish power and they will overpower the Bitcoin network.
Well, I didn't say that.
Okay, I'm sorry. All right.
Yeah, I've had a lot of conversations with Balage. That doesn't sound like
All right, Balage.
But I said that Bitcoin doesn't have an easy path to win, and it may take longer than certainly my lifetime, maybe your lifetimes, for Bitcoin to really win. I said proof of work on the long run will win, but on the short run, there's these very powerful entities, the people who control the money, and they have, look the pressure they put on Elon Musk. Like Elon started to go all in Bitcoin and all that, and then they basically told him, what's the term here, the G something, like this environmental EG whatever, and even though it's one of the richest men in the world, these guys have enough pressure power to make him backtrack. Okay, so essentially, this is what you're up against. This is the proof that it's not a smooth sailing, and we don't know how quick it is. And on top of that, there are ways to weaken it. And Dennis is a great sunny day scenario guy. So I loved listening to you, Dennis, about the pep talk of how it's going to change the world for everyone. I think we all agree with that. It's the question is the path and how we protect that path, and how vulnerable. It's much more vulnerable. Like we're amongst ourselves. I mean, I know we're being recorded, but I don't think that there's going to be a million views of that recording wherever you put it up. The truth is that
not with that attitude.
The path forward for this.
Everyone retweet the video when it comes out so we can expose everybody's opinions.
And then 10 people will watch it. So the fact is that the path forward is very hard, and that we were talking about Ethereum, your favorite subjects, Kody, but that a lot of banks are now flocking towards Ethereum because Ethereum going to proof of stake, it is a more friendly system for them. With their money, they can control more. Okay. And that's basically why there's going to be, I wouldn't be surprised if on the short run or midterm, Ethereum gets number one and Bitcoin number two for a while. For me, on the long term, proof of work is the only thing that can win, because otherwise we would be still in the caves. If innovation didn't matter, then we would be still in the caves. And because we're not in the caves, we know that innovation is what matters. So only a technology that favors innovation can survive on the long run. So that's a given. But the short run is bumpy. I mean, it's almost like volatility, but think of volatility in innovation. And this is actually a double entendre, because there's innovation in financials, but there's also innovation in kind of store of value. There's innovation in currency, and Bitcoin is actually at the intersection of a bunch of innovations, and Ethereum currently is actually not holding back innovation, because it actually helps right now. So we were just talking, Kody, about the fact that we're putting the smart contract and the dApp for the crypto class diploma or certificate on Ethereum, because it's right now it's easier to do it than on Lightning, but maybe a year from now it's going to be just as easy to do it on Lightning. In fact, with great coders like Kody, it's going to be maybe even just in a few months. So, and maybe Kody will be part of the project where we can actually migrate everything from Ethereum. All the contracts, all the diplomas will be migrated straight back. So that's basically what we're talking about, Kody. I'm gonna have to go on mute for a sec.
Yeah. I mean, for like, there's kind of two components that I think about where when it comes to Bitcoin versus anything else, is that Saylor talks about it in the Saylor series, where you can think about offensive and defensive superpowers, right? And that over any short-term time frame, the offensive superpower wins, right? Of like, hey, I can shoot lasers from my eyes and all that kind of stuff, right? But over any reasonable time span beyond the course of a couple months or a couple years, the person with the defensive superpower, the person with invulnerability, is the one who wins, right? And so if you look at the way that Bitcoin's design decisions are done, it's done with those defensive superpowers in mind, right? Where in the short term, right? Like theoretically, like somebody, if they just decided to dump $15 billion into Ethereum tomorrow, right? And not buy any Bitcoin, then that price action would probably push it up over like close to parity, right? If they just decided to just market buy as much as they fucking could, and they were totally fine with the price run up for it. They were just like, I just want to push Ethereum over the top, and they have like a couple $1 billion to play with to do it. Then like, yeah, sure, right? But the whole idea is, if we are trying to make the basis of a new financial system, then you optimize for the defensive superpowers, the invulnerability over time, so that as people try to kill you, they just bounce off, right? And so there's that component. But then the other component I think about is in terms of the asymmetric warfare that's being done by Bitcoin. And when you look at an asymmetric war, generally speaking, you just have to outlast the other person. And so if you look at like the Revolutionary War, the US didn't really win. They just lasted long enough that they exhausted the resources of the British government, so the British Empire, and they just made a deliberate decision that we're going to give up on this thing so that we can go optimize for India, right? And same thing for the Soviet Union fighting in Afghanistan, where the Afghans just outlasted them. And the same thing for the Afghans against the United States, where, you know, as many of the gains that we've made there have also been lost, right? Or they just outlast. And so I think that if you're trying to optimize for defeating somebody in an asymmetric war, then you do so in a way that you outlast them, right? And I think that all the points that you bring up about Bitcoin, and like that there are people who have financial interests and they want to take control of it, or that whatever it is, or they're not going to let it do it. They're going to try to like stick their muddy the waters with their little fingers, right? Is like the thing that springs to mind for me is that for a proof of stake system, right, is that just becomes infinitely easier, right? Where like if I want to just like, I have a lot of money and I have a lot of power, then I just set up a bunch of different validators, and it's like, yeah, sure, I can only put 20x 20 whatever ETH or whatever in each one of these things, but like, you know, I spend a couple $1 billion spinning up billions and billions of dollars worth of these validators, right? And just do it that way, right? But yeah, I mean, like for just those two components of it is, and I think that Balage is right? Where in the short term, anything can happen, right? It's just like somebody like rolls out of bed and, you know, like, I mean, Elon, if he wanted to, right? Like if he doesn't care, or if he like, you know, these people with the financial interest, or like a central bank, they decide that we're just going to keep printing money, right? And we're going to devalue our currency and put it to nothing just in order to secure a stake in the Bitcoin network, right? Is like they just print, and all they're doing with that money is buying Bitcoin with it or something, or buying Ethereum with it. Yeah, it's possible, but over any longer time span than like a year or a couple of years or something, then I think Balage is absolutely right in terms of, because of that proof of work system, which is a system optimized for defense in an asymmetric war, that it ends up winning.
Yeah, I think we maybe kind of were just misunderstanding Balage there. He has a very, very, very low time preference for Bitcoin, which is not a bad thing at all. I think Dennis and I are definitely a little bit more hopeful in how fast adoption propagates. I mean, it's been decently fast. I mean, to say that you created like the first legitimate decentralized digital currency, and in 10 years you had you can say the country's small. You could say the country's already opted out of their own currency when they went with a dollar. But either way, you had a country adopted as legal tender. I think that's much faster than anyone would have ever predicted. And to Dennis's point, he was saying any new technology takes 20 years to adopt. I think things might happen a little bit faster. Balazs brought up how quickly Elon flipped. but I've always been of the notion that follow what others do, not what they say. Like Elon might have flipped. I don't think Tesla sold Bitcoin off their balance sheet, and they definitely haven't picked up Doge at all. So and it's funny because like at all levels of the corporate world and government and just like the general population, you have either people that are very vocal pro Bitcoin, and then you have people who are anti Bitcoin completely, and then you also have the people who are anti Bitcoin but yet are buying it up and just aren't admitting it out there. So with inflation and everything we've seen, the pandemic has definitely exponentially expedited the adoption of digital assets, of Bitcoin. And I don't know. I still stick with my sunshine ideals, I guess, as Balage was saying. I don't think it's gonna be easy transitioning into this kind of world. I think there is going to be some pain. I think some countries are going to really see the brunt of it pretty badly, especially the ones that are at the top of the money printing game. Either way,
about it is
yeah,
like if you guys recall back to the beginning of COVID, right? This is always the example I use, is that like within the United States at least, there was like a single day that it went from, oh, this is something happening somewhere else, to, oh, this is here and everybody needs to get their money like under their pillow right now, right? And it was that same day, it was like March 16th or March 12th or whatever it was, where like Tom Hanks got it, they canceled March Madness, and like one other thing happened, right? And like it's just the confluence of those three things happening on the same day, just it flipped the switch, and just like the mass psychosis started and everybody started pulling out, right? But like so all this stuff is for Bitcoin is like, I think you see the same thing. There's going to be in retrospect, it was inevitable moment for like the Bitcoin standard, where it's like three things happen on the same day, right? Of that, like some country adopts it, like kind of like El Salvador model, but maybe it's an English speaking country or something, right? And then like simultaneously a sovereign wealth fund ups it to a 20% position within their portfolio. And then on the same day, like some major like Tom Brady style person or whatever, right? Instead of like, not to say that like, Russell Kung and Sean Culkin, they're like super valuable and important and all that kind of stuff, but then the same kind of like cultural clout that like somebody with a lot of cultural clout does, like, I'm gonna like pay me in Bitcoin, right? And then like the confluence of those three things coming together is what prompts it, right? And I think that that's the one where I think Alan's talking about that in terms of like the gradually then suddenly that it'll be happening faster. Is like in like looking forward, you're not going to see all those events hit the same time, but like in retrospect, those three things hitting at the same time, or those multiple things hitting at the same time, is going to be like, yeah, of course it was going to happen within the first 5 years or something, right?
I thought Kody, the way you described, by the way, nice to meet you.
Hi Dennis.
I've heard a little bit about you. I heard I saw your pieces of your interview with the podcast. So I think it was a really great explanation, the way that you describe the way that Bitcoin is built. I'd like to hear you kind of maybe expand a little bit on Bitcoin and its defensive abilities. You said specifically proof of work is a defensive mechanism. So I'm kind of or a system that's built for defense. I wonder if you could like expand on that, just because I think I really like the direction it's going. And I even saw someone in the chat, defense wins championships. I 100% agree with that. Just would love to hear you expand on it a little bit, because it's a great thought.
Kody, before you start, I just wanted to sign off and say thank you for everyone. This was awesome. I will watch the recording.
Really great contributions, Balage, for sure.
Publish the recording. I'm looking forward to see what you have to say, Kody. It's always a pleasure to be with you guys.
Balage,
looking forward to the next one.
Before you hop off, where can people follow you on Twitter?
Oh, it's W Swarm, like the web swarm, like the way you guys want Bitcoin to propagate.
Yeah, give Balage a follow. He's a great guy. He's one of the coaches in Pomp's crypto course. So Balage, we'll see you. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you, everybody.
Gotta get him over 1,000 followers. He's right there. He's gonna hit it. He's gonna hit it any second.
Yeah, right. So Dennis.
But yeah, Kody, please, that'd be great. Yeah, I'd love that.
Yeah, I think that like how do we mine Bitcoin? Right, is like it's not on GPUs anymore. It's on ASICs, right? And so what does ASIC stands for? Application specific integrated circuit, right? is that ASIC miners can mine Bitcoin, and that's all they do. They generate like SHA-256 hashes. That's what they do. They can't do other stuff, right? So in terms of the defensive capabilities of proof of work, specifically as it applies to Bitcoin, is that you have tons and tons of dedicated hardware that can't do anything else except secure the Bitcoin network, right? And so that, like, instead of I've decided that I now want to take over the Ethereum network or whatever, like, you know, the bad person who wants to do it is like, what do these people do? What, like Cantillon insiders, when they want to take over something, is that they print a ton of money, they buy a ton of it, and now they have a giant stake in it, right? And so with proof of work, it's okay, you can print all that money, but now what do you have to do with it? Well, now you have to take it, you have to build hardware, you have to have that hardware. You see it growing over time, and as it's adding into the network, it's not something where it's just you flip a switch and then it's like you've taken it over, right? And then you also have to think about the opportunity cost of, as they're building this hardware and as they're building it out, they're mining Bitcoin and they're making money doing it, right? And so in terms of the defensive components of it, is that as you try to attack it, it integrates you in, and now your incentives become to, instead of attacking the network and trying to take it down, it becomes to continue contributing to the network, right? Because as you're adding in your hash power to it, the difficulty adjustment is going up, right? And so it's like just some of the beautiful game theory behind it, of that the incentive for somebody trying to attack it, as he tries to attack it, becomes to, oh, well, what if I just keep mining Bitcoin, right?
Right.
So like
If
that's
I
one of the
attack it,
many.
I'm going to lose out on more money than I would wasting my
Yeah.
time attacking the network, which I actually I brought that up a little bit earlier in the conversation, was just like, at some point, you know, like the monetary incentive to keep the network alive is going to be so great that it just, you can do everything. Like if you're on the other standing side, like if you throw up like a firewall like North Korea has around the internet, like look at how much they've fallen behind because they did something
Yeah.
like that. Like it's just
Yeah,
not.
I mean, if you look at it, is like there's a lot of places, like if something is deemed a national security thing, they will mine it or they will create it below cost, right? And sorry, for above cost, below cost.
You had it
Yeah,
right the
yeah,
first time.
right. And so for like, this is like my long-term view on this, right? Is like, take it out long enough, people are like, oh, hey, once the inflation goes away and they're not going to getting a block reward whatsoever with it, then why would miners continue to mine? I'm like, well, because at that point we've hit the Bitcoin standard and it's a national security issue to maintain the money supply, and so you're going to have a bunch of people, like governments, who are like paying to run miners, right? And they're like, yes, like we're losing X amount of money in electricity every single year doing this, but it's securing the entire financial system that we've built our entire economy off of, and so that's totally okay to do, right? It's the same thing of like, you can make the argument that it's like similar to like why do we pay for X amount of billions of dollars every single year in training costs for like the military and stuff like that? It's like, yeah, sure, we're maintaining a peacetime military and this kind of stuff, but like primarily the reason why is because it's a national security issue, and it supports everything else that we do, and so we're willing to take the loss on this one because of the gains that we get for what's been built on top of it, right?
Yeah, I love the idea. Like the president of El Salvador, like, you know, lots of come out about kind of his, you know, his past, and maybe he's, you know, had some authoritarian tendencies or actions in the past, and is he doing this for the good of his people truly, or is he doing it because maybe he's, you know, narcissistic and he has some kind of, you know, alternative motive? But like Bitcoin doesn't care, I guess, you know, if that's the case, that he's doing it for selfish measures. And so like if he was, he's basically taking away some of his own power by, you know, by doing that, at least in the long term. So I just think that's like one of the beautiful things about it.
Yeah.
I agree with the thoughts around countries eventually mining Bitcoin themselves. I think it's totally a national security issue. They're not going to want to, you know, not only are you, what you're saying, which is a great point, where they can accumulate Bitcoin for less than the market value, but also they can make sure that, you know, if you're a USA, you're going to want to have some hash rate to make sure that, you know, you're staving off countries like China or Russia completely controlling the hash rate. So I think inevitably a lot of governments will do what happened in El Salvador, and they're incentivized to mine it, and then for El Salvador, maybe they'll mine so much of it and they'll just keep giving it to their people. Who fucking knows? But I definitely see a world where countries are competing on a grand scale to to increase their hash rate. I don't know. What's your thoughts around the ESG stuff then too, dude? Because it's like, I don't like the ESG stuff, but at the same time, if they can get carbon credits to mine Bitcoin and we're bringing more hash rate to the United States, that could be good for national security purposes. I just don't like when the incentive model is changed away from, the free market pursuit of the cheapest form of energy. Now they're trying to pursue the carbon credits. It's kind of where I don't like it for that reason. But when you're talking about it for national security purposes, it could be a good way to drive cheaper Bitcoin mining in the United States specifically.
Yeah, I think that there's two components of it, right? Is that the point is like when it comes to the ESG thing, like Bitcoin wins the argument, right? Is that I think that Sailor was talking about it, right? In terms of governance, right? It's that, it's, what's it called? It's a decentralized peer-to-peer system where nobody's in charge, and like on governance, like it's exactly what you want within a money supply. If you're not like, it's like, I think Balage uses the example of like, if you're not Windows and you're not Apple, then you want Linux, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you want the open, free open source software that nobody's in charge of, right? But if you're Windows, then you like being in charge. If you're Mac, then you're like, well, I'd like to like be in charge myself, and I'm close to being there, right? But if you're not one of those two people, then you want that. And it's the same thing with Bitcoin, right? Where it's, if I get to be the one printing the money, I love it. So if I'm like the US dollar, if I'm China, then I'm like, I'm very close to being the one printing the money. And so I'd love that as well. If you're not China and you're not the United States, you want somebody where nobody's in charge, right? And so in terms of the governance thing, I think that makes a lot of sense. In terms of the social value, Sailor talked about it this morning where he was like, yeah, it brings property rights to 8 billion people, right? I think the environmental thing, Bitcoin wins that argument, but because it's, creating economic incentives for people to do renewables, people to do those kinds of things where they wouldn't otherwise have it, because now they have a buyer of last resort for their energy, where every time that I'm producing, like there's wind power when it's not needed, is I don't have to store it in a battery, I can store it in Bitcoin. But I think that the problem is when you even grant the argument, right? Where once you grant the argument and you're arguing on those terms, it's a lot harder to win that argument, right? And so I think instead of granting the argument of the ESG thing, it's that you just move aside from it and you do what the classic Bitcoin argument is. And I think that this is why you want to do this, is you want to do it in terms of free market principles, right? Instead of the whole ESG debate, because when you grant the argument, now you're arguing on their terms, versus when you don't grant the argument, you say that it's my purchase power, I can do with it what I want, right? Like I'm paying for it, you're selling it to me, like shut up, right? And I think that there's certain people that are like going to get the ESG argument better, but I think over the long term, right, if the thing that we're going for is a free and open market, then you don't grant the argument that, yeah, it's okay that we mess with the market and these things and don't have these market incentives as it applies to that. I'm not sure if I did a good job explaining that. But
we kind of already saw it lose out. I mean, I don't know. I don't want to say it was the CEO of Marathon, but one of the board members was talking about how they wanted to do, I mean, for those that don't know, Marathon wanted to go to ESG route. They attempted it. They said they got pretty much set up to do it. And then they realized like all the clients that wanted to buy it were just virtue signaling and weren't willing to pay more for that green mined Bitcoin, and that goes down to just like the free markets. Like ultimately, like if you're going to want to optimize for the cheaper mining, like if no one's going to pay more for money, it's just not going to play out.
Yeah.
Kody, I'm curious. So we were talking about earlier, Balage is very, very patriotic. And I think all of us up here are too. And I think sometimes people get confused when people are very pro Bitcoin. They're like, oh, well, you're anti-American. And I don't like that statement. I disagree with it. Greg Foss all the time says like buying Bitcoin is like the most pro-American thing you can do. Kody, I know you served our country, gave a lot of time to our country. And I would assume you're of the same stance that buying Bitcoin is very pro-American. I'm just curious what your stance is on that. I feel like you could argue that way better than I could.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what you mean by American, right? I mean, like, I think that the president just yesterday was like, give me a definition of American, and you can't do it or something like that, right?
Right.
But it's like if your definition of America is like
Do you mind
You
pulling
know?
your mic away a little bit from your
Yeah,
mouth?
sorry
Just
about
a little
that.
bit. No, you're good.
So it's if he's like, if your definition of American is like Declaration of Independence style life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right? Like that's a quote that was taken from, I think, a Swiss philosopher, but it's like the original one is life, liberty, and the pursuit of property, right? And so if that's your definition of American, then I think Bitcoin is like very much like American, right? The same way that if you look at during the Revolutionary War, the whole argument for America is that we are realizing the values that England says that they uphold but don't, right? In terms of democracy, in terms of representative government, and those kinds of things, right? And so if that's what you mean by American, then like, yeah, buying Bitcoin is incredibly pro-American because you're like bringing property rights to people, right? It's like an immutable property. It's everything about like the individual, like the sovereign individual that is supposed to be kind of like the ideal within America, then yeah, you're definitely doing that. But if you're talking about like within the interests of the government, right? It's like, you know, when you download Linux, like you're not supporting the Windows operating system, right? And so I guess if that's your definition, then that's what it is. Like I happen to be with the former, right? But like, you know, if your definition of the latter, it's like what makes something pro-America is if it is supporting like money printing and Cantillon insiders and all that kind of stuff, then it's like, yeah, sure, I guess Bitcoin.
I think there's
It's
very
just like
few
it's about
people.
defining your terms.
I think there's
The
very few
banks-
people who would say that's pro-American.
But it is kind of true though that
Yeah.
that's kind of what America has become. It's like obsession over foreign policy and control. We've really gotten away from America that it used to be. I think that I was making some points earlier before you joined the call that I actually see Bitcoin as extremely American. I think it has a lot of parallels to why we left England, why we fought for our freedom from them as well, and it's really easy to see how we left England because of the separation of church and state, and now we want a separation of money and state, and then also we fought for our freedom, obviously for a lot of reasons, but something that really the thing that broke the camel's back was taxation without representation. And we all know that money printing, inflation, debasement is a form of tax, an invisible tax on Americans and everybody across the whole planet, really.
Mhm.
And that by adopting Bitcoin, we're getting rid of that invisible inflation and invisible tax. So I see it as truly American. I also, people try to say like, oh, well, in order for Bitcoin to succeed, America has to fail. I just am so opposed to that ideology. I absolutely do not agree with that. I think that having the national reserve currency has put us in a position where we're actually hurting ourselves in order to sustain power. When you have the national reserve currency, it makes your exports more expensive, which means that we aren't selling anything. This is part of the reason why we've gone from being an industrial nation to, you know, a consumer nation, because we don't make stuff anymore. It's too expensive. And so I think that by getting rid of that getting rid of national reserve currency status, that will help us rebuild middle America, help us rebuild good paying jobs. Because of that, I think also college will get cheaper. So many people that's like, what are your options? Work a dead end job where you're like minimum wage, maybe just above that, or go try to actually like get a career via the college system. And so that's why I think there's such a high demand for entry into these universities. And I think if you take away national reserve currency status, you rebuild exports, you're going to rebuild the middle class, good paying jobs. You're going to have less demand for college. So that's a benefit of itself. I mean, also real estate, we all know that real estate has become one of the de facto store of values in this country, all across the world. And with Bitcoin, it's infinitely better as a store of value than real estate. And so more of that store of value premium will move to Bitcoin, make real estate cheaper. I just see it as like, there's so many things it's going to fix and improve. And yeah, maybe the multinational corporations with their Cantillon insiders will not be as powerful. And maybe some of our foreign policy moves will have to adjust in the way we do those things. Obviously, we can't be using the military that way, the way we have in the past. But ultimately it's going to help more Americans and take power away from the ultra wealthy, ultra elites. And I think it will inevitably, moving forward into the new world, I think as long as America makes the decision soon enough to adopt Bitcoin, that we'll be on the winning side. And ultimately, I think Americans will benefit from the move.
Yeah, 100%. All right, we're approaching on the 2-hour mark here for the Sunday Scaries. So really great conversation. If you guys haven't followed Balage already, go follow Balage. Kody, thanks for hopping on briefly. Dennis, as always, you joined again. I think this has been going pretty well. Looks like Kody just dipped out. He looked like he was good with the combo. I was gonna let him plug his Twitter again, but Dennis, as always, go follow his podcast, Smart People Shit. It's a great listen. He's had some fantastic guests on, like Jimmy Song. Dennis, what's your Twitter?
It's at Dennis_Porter_, or if you just type in Dennis Porter on Twitter, you'll find me pretty easily. I'm the only semi-famous on Twitter anyways, enough to show up on top, right? On Twitter. So yeah, there. And then also all the channels for podcasting. And then I'm launching my YouTube channel on Monday. So keep an eye out for that.
Definitely keep an eye out for that. I'm excited for that myself. You can follow me at Alan Hoddle. And then if you guys ever want to jump into a Sunday Scary session, I post on Friday, usually in the afternoon, the link for the Zoom. And then 30 minutes before we go live, I post it again on there. It's also on the podcast Twitter at COB Podcast. So make sure you give that a follow as well. And please make sure to leave a like, subscribe, leave a comment. If there's some particular things you want us to talk about next week, let us know in the comments. Dennis, thanks for coming on, man.
Thanks, man. It was a fun one. Have a good one. I'll see you soon.
See ya.